Hello and welcome to the Srijan Wednesday webinars. If you're joining us for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies, where you can tune into some great sessions on topics ranging from front-end technologies, UI UX, mobile apps to media, entrepreneurship, community building, and digital marketing. Today, we will take a look at Agile as a concept and how that applies to organizations as a whole. We dive into what Agile organizations mean, why they are a good idea, and how we can bring the Agile culture across organizational functions. Our speaker for today is Rajat Lal, Business Head at Srijan Technologies. Over the last 15 years, Rajat has worked in customer-facing leadership roles to help technology and outsourcing organizations build their market presence, positioning, and internal processes. He has also played a key role in helping them win and manage long-term customer relations. Now, before we get started, I would like to request all participants to please type in any questions that you have during the presentation, and we will take them up in the last 15 minutes of this session. Also, don't forget to take the conversation live on Twitter using our hashtag SrijanWW. You can share your thoughts by tagging us in your tweets using our handle @Srijan and the speaker's handle, which will be up on your screens right now. So without taking up any more time, let's get started. Rajat, over to you.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, Rajat, you're audible. Please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilanjana. Hello everyone, this is Rajat Lal here. Thank you, Nilanjana, for the brief introduction of myself and this presentation. So glad to be presenting this to you all today, transitioning to an organization-wide agile culture. And what are we covering in this is what it means to build an organizational agile culture, agility in leadership, transitioning to an agile culture, agile across organizational functions. Just want to reiterate that this is taking agile across various organizational functions and not about taking agile development across the function, across the organization. I'm trying to talk of agile as a culture here, as a philosophy, and not as a competency or a process which needs to be duplicated across different functions. So with that small clarification, I'll proceed. A dictionary definition of agile: quick, coordinated in movement, active, lively, marked by an ability to think quickly, mentally acute or aware. So why create an agile organization, and how do these definitions of agile apply to an organization? Today, organizations are faced with a continuous, fast evolving optimization of their processes, having to deliver products and projects very quickly, needing to decide very quickly with direction changing all the time. And what's needed to work and succeed in this kind of environment? A leadership which drives the culture and drives initiatives, being aware of and adaptable to change, be able to learn with flexibility and respond to market situations, and be able to collaborate, engage with customers, collaborate internally, and constantly develop new innovative answers. This is a study by McKinsey on how different organizations, a sample of 160 plus organizations, scored on their management practices, and how they scored compared to which were the most agile organizations and which were the least agile organizations. So what this shows is the most agile organizations also scored very highly on these management practices and the associated outcomes linked to these practices. So things like accountability, innovation, culture, motivation, learning, coordination. The organizations which are more agile are doing much better on all these parameters. What does it mean to build an organization culture? Now we traditionally talk of waterfall methodology versus agile methodology, and if I extend that analogy to organizations, then we are talking of traditional or waterfall organizations versus agile organizations. And there is a sea change of difference in the way the culture, the organizational structure, the focus, the goal, and the way they communicate is managed within these organizations, and that's the difference you see over here. Agile organizations are having a great deal of alignment and clarity around their vision and values. There's a lot of coordination working in self-organizing team as opposed to formal structures. The focus is outside in, looking at what the customer outside is wanting and expecting and being able to delight the customer. The focus is on people and outcomes rather than products and outputs. And looking at parallel conversations, horizontal conversations within teams and not just bottom-up reporting. So to drive this, what role does leadership play? Where does leadership come in? And what is agility in leadership? Let's take a look. So leadership is an action, not a position. Leadership is achieved by having shared vision, leading change, empowerment, by example, being positive, taking positive decisions in negative situations. So these are various ways in which leaders lead. But what is agility in leadership? For this, I want to show a small video of a story of a person who is sent on a mission. He's sent on the mission without having full facts about the mission. He's sent on the mission just because he's a pilot and pilots are in short supply. Everybody else in the team is an expert in his or her area except this person. Yet by the end of the mission, this person comes to lead and comes to lead by example. And this is what I say as an example of agility in leadership. So let's watch the video. It's about 4.5 minutes. There may be a bit of buffering which you might experience, and we'll just pause in the middle and ask you whether you are able to see the video clearly or is it buffering for you. And if it is, then we'll just skip and summarize the video. So here we go. So what we're trying to show in this video is how this person harnesses knowledge, his observations, his experience, instincts, and feelings into what we call situational awareness, being aware of what was happening, being aware of the possibility in the seemingly hopeless situation, what we call being positive in negative situations, being able to seize the moment, launch himself into action, and action by example, where the rest of the team believed that it was impossible. But he was driven by not because it was impossible, because he thought it was necessary. So he led and drove the collaboration in the team to do certain tasks to achieve what was necessary, which was the docking. So that's what agility in leadership is, being able to show situational awareness, being able to take willful action, lead by example, and drive collaboration and teamwork. As Machiavelli says over here, to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. So that's agile. Leadership is one thing, but agile is all about taking the lead in unfamiliar situations and leading by example. And this is the same thing which is said in this book by Joyner and Josephs, Leadership Agility. When they talk of context setting agility, they are talking again of situation awareness, being able to take willful action. Stakeholder understanding and power style is about leadership. Creative agility is again looking at the situation around you and taking a judgment call, and being able to motivate yourself and your team members to take action. Different words, but essentially saying the same thing. So what do we do as leaders, as people, to transition to an agile organization? Transitioning to an agile organization requires leaders to really lead through their own experiences and storytelling. Leaders build their credibility when they're able to share stories about their own selves, about their lives, what they believe in, what creativity, transformation, innovation means to them through real life examples. And when they do this, they're able to strike a connect with people and inspire people to understand what needs to change with those people themselves and inspire those people to make that change. Leadership is very crucial for inspiring people to make this cultural leap, because what else will work? If you try to give them charts or information, it can give them data. It cannot make them inspired. If you give them a lot of facts and figures, you are just providing proof, but you're not providing inspiration. So that is where stories comes in, and that is where stories help build values, and then values drive what the organization's strategy should be, its cultural style and leadership should be. The other aspect of transitioning to an agile organization or an agile culture is to create a highly learning organization, a learning culture. People are able to learn, trust themselves and their organization, share knowledge, and learn from failure and from mistakes. And this learning is retained within the organization through sharing, and that's what helps build a generation of leaders and leads to the continuity of the organization and the business. So transitioning to Agile involves enable people to look inside and look at the customer and see what the customer needs, and then take initiative based on that. And that helps them find a purpose to their work, because they are doing something inspiring for themselves and something which they think will create delight for the customer. At an operational level, what it involves is being able to build cross-functional owner teams. Teams will take the responsibility as well as credit, as well as the accountability for the failures, and move forward on that basis. Being able to reward individual and team capacity, and looking at siloed functions adopt agility in their operations. So we tend to think that certain functions work in the traditional way, and that's the only way they work. But that is necessarily not true when there is change in the organization, in the environment, in the markets, in times of turbulence. You cannot be acting with yesterday's logic in times of turbulence. So where can we use Agile other than the development function itself, other than software development itself? So probably that's not the right question to ask, because Agile is an attitude and a culture. We cannot simply treat it as a methodology or a technology or a technique. So the question to ask is not whether can we use Agile, but rather how do we use Agile? How Agile can we be in this particular area? So let's look at some of these areas. Agile across organization functions. So let's talk of sales. Since I come from sales, I've talked about sales first. Sales hunters are usually equated with predatory hunters like tigers or cheetahs. The sales hunting is normally associated with mindless or restless action with salespeople, always buzzing around, always moving around, but you never know whether there's a purpose to it or not. But the hunter actually, the sales hunter or the predatory hunter like a tiger, normally waits, it tracks, it observes before launching into action at the right moment. And when it launches into action, it brings all his strengths in the case of the predatory hunter and all his organization's strengths in the case of the sales hunter. He brings all his strengths into play. So being able to do this is about awareness and agility. So what's needed for a sales hunter, or what's needed for a sales organization? A keen awareness of the customer and the market, being able to anticipate situations, being able to bring all your strengths into play when you need them, and being able to do this with speed and agility. That's what agility in sales says. So if you apply agile principles in sales, what you could be doing is something which looks like this. We're all aware of the sales cycle or the sales process or the sales funnel, which as we call it, where we talk of moving from researching a prospect to mapping it, to engaging with it, to delivering a proposal, to following up on the proposal, negotiating the proposal, and closing it. That's what we call the sales cycle. But instead, if you're looking outside in, we're really talking of understanding what is the customer buying cycle. Where is the customer? We may be trying to say we are at the proposal stage and give a proposal to the customer. The customer may be at the stage of, he may not even have defined what he wants to himself. He may be at the stage of trying to figure out what he wants to get done. What solution is he looking for? So that's called the customer buying cycle. Running with the customer buying cycle involves being aware of what the customer is, what is he deciding, who are the key decision makers in his organization, what are they doing, what are they looking for, what are their concerns, and then at what stage of decision making are they, and being able to react, respond in a flexible, in a responsive manner to wherever they are in their customer buying cycles. And that calls you to not just follow and implement your sales plan or your marketing campaign plan the way you designed it, but being able to strike a balance, assess what is happening at the customer's end, and respond to emergent situation with a lot of flexibility. It is also about traditional notions of sales, that salespeople work in designated territories or designated markets or vertical markets, and they typically work alone in those markets. But today, in a changing situation, what needs to be happening is, especially when you want to engage the customer at all levels, you need to be engaging as an organization, as a team. So there may be different roles, different sales members in your teams are playing to engage with the same organization. That's called team engagement and lateral accountability. There are different levels of accountability you hold, and maybe your superior in the sales organizations or your peer or your team member are holding for the same account. Finally, in terms of reporting, we all talk of sales funnels, numbers and targets and projections, and reporting this upwards to the next level in the sales hierarchy. But rather than that, look at what needs to be accomplished and divide that list of tasks into activities that different members in the sales team are carrying out. And being able to track that activity, hold people accountable within your sales team as to how are we moving forward with all that we had planned to do for this particular customer or this particular market. So that's the difference. Being able to be flexible, responsive, understand what's happening at the customer's end, organize yourselves and your teams accordingly, respond with actions and plans accordingly. Obey the spur of the moment. Some examples, how we can use sales. So while I said this is not about methodology, this is about culture, but in some ways in which we have been using the agile process in sales is, for example, doing a lot of backlogs and sprints for mailing campaigns. And we've been agile enough to keep modifying our mailing campaigns, the sprint cycles we planned out. We plan mailing cycles over 2 months, and then we see how they're going after 15 days or 30 days and see what we need to change in our campaigns. That's basically what we are doing, is we are trying to track what the customer is thinking, how he's reacting, whether he's reading our mails, whether he's responding to them, what the market might be looking for. Are we targeting, are we sending the right kind of messages, right kind of pitches in our campaigns? How are we taking these forwards? That's just one example in terms of sales campaigns or marketing campaigns. There can be different examples that you might be seeing in your organization, in your sales process, where you could apply Agile both as a culture and as a methodology in different ways. There's an example given over here. I don't want to go into the link because it's quite a detailed a page describing what this company called Accurate did to adopt Scrum processes in its sales function. The link is there. You can see it offline. I'll continue to another function in HR. Now, if you see what we are talking about in HR, you'll relate it to the slide, one of the earlier slides on the study by McKinsey in terms of what are the management practices which are typically adopted by Agile organizations more and not so much by non-Agile organizations. And you'll see most of those practices are what is typically driven by a Agile HR function in terms of organization design, being able to create empowered teams with clear roles and relationships. And this is important because in a Scrum process or in an Agile process for development teams, the roles are clearly defined. There's a product owner, there's a Scrum master, there are developers, there are quality analysts, there are architects, there are business analysts. So the roles are clearly defined. But when you're creating empowered teams in non-development functions, when you want to create teams to look after a new initiative, go into a new market, you need to have teams involving members with different backgrounds, in different roles. Now what those roles are, what the relationships are, what the objective of each of those roles is, needs to be very clearly defined. And once that is done and they are empowered teams, they will themselves set their own targets. They'll be able to work in a transparent way in terms of what is the project, who are the experts on the project in different areas, that is going back to the roles. They're able to look at the project and their roles in terms of what is needed from the customers or the market's perspective. I use the words customer and market interchangeably over here. So customer-focused interactions means looking at what's needed out there and are we moving towards that? Are our roles aligned to that? And a focus on continuous learning and knowledge sharing. So that is how an Agile HR function can really impact organizational design. Agile HR can also help existing leaders, existing team members, key people in the company, in fact all people in the company, to become Agile leaders or adopt Agile as a culture. Okay, this is about how do you define performance management in an Agile organization, roles and functions, focus on behaviors and values as opposed to skills and knowledge, being able to do scenario planning, create openness to change, openness to innovation, to collaboration. So that's about developing existing leaders, training existing people, and as well as hiring new people. Again, hire for creativity, collaboration, innovation, rather than hiring just on the basis of skill definitions. Look for complex thinkings. Be able to hire and promote experts as opposed to general managers, because those experts need to fill into clearly defined roles. Create a brand in your company so that the right people come to you, and it is not just a process of creating a job description and seeking resumes. We move to finance. So there are areas in finance also which can be looked upon. There are areas in all functions. In fact, I have taken only these three functions here, sales, HR, and finance, to talk about. So we have project funding, where again you adopt the sprint cycle model. Take a project as a in-house startup, give it some funding and for a definite period, and then in that period evaluate how that project moves, whether it's worth giving another round of funding. So that's how you adopt a sprint cycle model for project funding. Incentivize teams, teams which are empowered and looking at a particular initiative, rework their compensation packages in some way provide them some equity compensation in terms of if they are able to add value on those products or on those projects, be able to incentivize them for working on ideas based on market insights. Don't penalize them for mistakes, but mistakes are a process of learning. Encourage them to analyze their mistakes, to add to their product portfolio, to their product features, to adopt new tactics. The ability to make short-term commitments based on real project progress and emerging market realities. So that's what Agile in finance function could be, and I'm sure there could be other areas, other ways in which you could adapt Agile culture over here. In summary, what it means to be Agile. Playing another video, again, if it buffers, I'll just stop in the middle and I'll summarize.
Well, I mean, definitely in the beginning, I had no intention or whatsoever that what I was practicing and what I'm still practicing now would lead to this to begin with. But martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art. All type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. So therefore, they're coming in to and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do something new. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through something, be it determination or whatsoever.
Don't think. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. When I look around.
Just wanted to intervene over here, first to ask whether it's buffering or not, or whether it's clear. And secondly, that last statement, don't look at the finger, look, or you'll miss all that heavenly glory. In other words, it's saying don't focus on the process. Look at what's outside and see what you can do.
I always learn something, that is to be always yourself and to express yourself. Do not go out and look for examples of personality and duplicate.
That wasn't very clear. He was saying do not go out and look for examples of personalities to duplicate.
Honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean, blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not, my friend, is very hard to do. And you have to train. You have to keep your reef, and when you move, you are determined to move, not taking 1 inch, not anything less than. So that is the type of thing you have to train yourself into it, to become one with one family. It just so happened, man, that look upon oneself as an actor. I mean, you will be very superstar.
Therefore, you've got to admit that you are a superstar. You know.
I have been very successful. I do not look upon. When you're talking about fighting as it is, and when you do punch, you for
I'm not sure how clear the video was. But just to summarize, I'm not sure how many of you could view that clearly or hear that clearly, but just to summarize what it means to be agile, and everything that you see in italics over here are sentences or phrases used by Bruce Lee in his interview that you just saw. Think and to feel, be yourselves, express yourselves, look around, always learn something, empty your mind, be formless, be shapeless like water. Train your reflexes so when you want it, it's there. If I want to, I'm going to do it. You are determined to move. Talk about it as it is, without rules. Train every part. These are all expressions and phrases used by him. And if you see, they relate to a lot of concepts, a lot of phrases, words we use when we talk about agile culture. Being lively, leading, be able to be aware, absorb, adapt, be flexible, be determined, be quick and well coordinated, and learn. It all goes back to the same management practices that the McKinsey study was pointing out, to a lot of cultures and attitudes which this presentation has talked about. That's what I wanted to just show quickly over here. To go back to the slide again, Agile is an attitude, not a technique with boundaries. An attitude has no boundaries. So we should ask, how more agile can we be in whatever we are doing? Whether we are talking of ourselves as individuals or talking of ourselves as organizations. Thank you very much. I hope this presentation was useful and audible and clear. If there are any questions, I'm ready to take them now. Thank you so much for being here with me.
All right, Rajat. So thank you for the presentation, and the video at the end was definitely much clearer than the previous video that you played, and we did get a lot of what Bruce Lee was saying in there. Since most of your presentation was centered around Agile as a concept and as a philosophy, so the kind of questions that we've had are not exactly questions as such, but more of thoughts from our viewers, and I would just like bring them to your attention and want you to react to whatever they were saying. Okay, so first up, something that has come up in a lot of our audience, what our audience has to say is that in treating Agile as a concept that would make organizations better, but there are certain cases where Agile becomes misinterpreted as something that can solve all problems or solve everything for your customers. So how would you react to that? Like, have you been in a situation where Agile has been misinterpreted into a one-size-fits-all solution that seems to solve every problem?
Yeah, I'll just react to this. It's a very good question. In fact, just earlier today, I was reading, a LinkedIn post by a CTO who sits in the UK, and his post was all about Agile does not work. And his opening sentence was, try saying to somebody that you are not Agile. You are likely to be arrested and put into prison. So what he was trying to say here is that Agile has been adopted as a buzzword without really understanding or without really going into it. It's become more of a fashionable word now. So that's where I just want to go back and distinguish between Agile as a culture and an attitude as opposed to Agile as a methodology. Use the word Agile as a solution may not fit all. So the word solution, I think, is closer to process and methodology and not really to culture or attitude. That's how I look at it and how I think about it. So what I mean to say is, yes, there is no one size fits all, but it's about attitude, and your attitude is really determined by your own reality. It's like being a tiger hunting for its prey. At what moment does it just keep lying low? And at what moment does it choose to attack its prey? That depends on its reality, on its surroundings. How well hidden is it? How quickly might the prey move away from him? When should he spring at the prey? So that's about knowing your reality, being situationally aware, and then reacting. And when I'm describing all this, I'm describing an attitude, I'm describing a way of life. I'm not setting a process in terms of when you should spring at your prey and when you should not. That's really for you to determine. So that's what I would like to say is at the end, that if you're really looking at it as a process, then of course no one process fits everybody. I was talking about using Agile sprint methodology in the sales and marketing campaigns we do. And we started off by defining that we'll run a series of mailers for our customers, for our prospects, and we'll run them at certain intervals, and there'll be different mailers with different topics. And then we said that we will define this as a calendar over the next 2 months, and let's measure what's going to happen after 2 months. Now, we are about 1 month into that process. And what we are finding is we are already thinking, shall we just take a pause and see what's happening in this 1 month itself? Because do we really want to invest 2 months into just doing this investigation rather than try and reach our customers faster? So we are already trying to modify what we ourselves set as a campaign. Now, if we stick to it, it's not going to succeed. It may succeed for me, it may not succeed for my counterpart who looks after another part of my company's sales. So that's why I think the question is absolutely right. One size does not fit all, but it's important to look at it that if you're looking at it as a process, there is no one process which will fit everyone. Process has to vary. Even when we do agile projects, software development projects, and we say we will do 2 sprints of an initial discovery workshop. 2 sprints of discovery workshop does not fit every customer. For some, we might just do half a sprint, 1 week. So yes, one size does not fit all when you talk of process or methodology. But when you talk of it as a culture, as an attitude, then you adopt that culture and attitude and you make it succeed the way it needs to work for you.
Okay, so another question that we've had is that what kind of work does Srijan do in terms of agile transformations as at an organizational level?
Unmuted.
So Srijan as a company has adopted agile process and methodology and culture for quite some time now. We have in-house agile coaches who work with the internal teams to create the Scrum methodology. All our development teams are running on agile, and recently we've been trying to adapt agile to at least the sales team and in parts the HR team as well. So we have in-house resident sales coaches, some very experienced people. One of these is Avinash Shiralage, who's also spoken a lot on agile methodology and culture. In fact, he has a blog of his own. It's called Agile Buddha. We can send you the link separately of that. We'd be happy to have Avinash work with your organization as well. And it's not just Avinash, there are other people who work along with Avinash and in parallel to Avinash in the organization. So we'd be happy to look into seeing how we could help other organizations as well. Our core focus is of course around Drupal CMS content management solution development and services. But we adopt Agile as a practice. We have a lot of Scrum Masters, Scrum teams. And if we need assistance in just assistance or consulting in just setting up a Scrum practice or a Scrum team, we'd be happy to assist you in that.
All right. Could you talk a bit about, so Srijan adopts Agile in its development processes, and you also mentioned it adopting Agile a bit in its sales and HR team. So you talked a bit about how it's done in the sales team. Could you also like go into a bit about how you're adopting Agile for your HR teams maybe?
In terms of HR teams, what we are trying to do is really train our HR people, our key HR people, to be leaders in their own right and not just be siloed in their functions, which may be of HR management or maybe of recruitment or training. Those are functions they continue to perform, but they're also investing time and effort and energy into trying to be all-round leaders, all-round management leaders, working with different teams, working with sales team for that matter, working with the CEO, working with different development teams to understand how these teams need to be made fully productive, how they can become fully productive, how they can become more efficient, more effective in how each of these functional teams are working. So we have a case of one of our HR managers who works very closely on all key initiatives, all key strategic initiatives, be it setting up operations in a new country, be it pushing sales in a new market. So not just in terms of hiring people or training people, but also in terms of how the culture needs to be driven when we set up operations in a new country or we acquire a new enterprise customer. So these are different ways in which we are making or we are enabling our HR people become more well-rounded business people or operations people, and with a focus on being able to support the functional teams be more effective in their customer interaction, in their reach to market. All about looking outside in and being able to respond in an agile, flexible manner. So this is what some of our HR team members are adopting different roles. So that's how I think Agile is moving ahead as far as the HR function is concerned.
All right, so next up, the thing we have here is any sort of transformation brings with it a lot of resistance. So, and there is a set pattern that companies are used to working in. So how do you overcome that resistance to, sort of push Agile into being the accepted cultural practice?
I think here is where leadership comes into play, and leadership becomes very critical. When I say leadership, I mean leadership from the top level. In our company, given the size of the company, it definitely means the CEO and his next level people. In fact, in all organizations, it starts from the CEO or the top management of the company. So where there is resistance to change, I think the essence is going back to being able to share experiences, being able to share what caused transformation in me. If I am the CEO of the company, why did I start behaving in a certain way, in a way that led me to adopt Agile culture, Agile as the approach? What were my experiences? What were my challenges? Share those stories in an open manner. When I say open manner, it means not just being transparent. It also means exposing my own vulnerability. That look, I was vulnerable when I went through this, and I'm still vulnerable going through this. And when you open that, you create a space where the other person empathizes with you and relates that to his own situation, and then he opens up himself. So I think that sharing of your own experiences, your own stories is very important as a leader. That's what causes the other person to trust you more. And when that trust is established, it becomes easier to break through the resistance or break through the inhibitions that the other person or a particular unit or team might be feeling, and create that open space in which the other team feels emboldened to experiment and adopt something which till now they were uncomfortable with. I think that's the first step. That's the most necessary step. That's the first step. I began with agility in leadership before moving on to the transitioning and before moving on to how it is adopted in different functions, because I think it starts with the leadership.
All right. So next up, even though you have stressed that the entire how Agile goes on in the development process cannot exactly be mapped on to the other organizational functions. But talking of sales, you did talk that you did say that the sprint methodology or the concept of the sprint in Agile can be used onto the sales function. So are there some other elements of the Agile in the development process that can be mapped on to the other functions? Is there anything else that can be similarly adapted?
Yeah, hello. I guess, yeah, most concepts of Agile can be adopted. You just have to see how is it working. Just if I say sprint approach is working for me in my mailing campaign, not necessarily it will work for you. Or not necessarily it will work for you in the same way. So it's a function of what your business, what your operations are about, how your sales process or any other functional process is run. Just to give you an example, we talk about backlog in the Agile process, the prioritized backlog. So another thing we do is when we work on our customers, at least I create with my immediate team, I create a backlog in terms of which customers to go after and complete a particular set of customers, which are identified. When I say customers, I'm talking of prospective customers. So identify these prospective customers on the basis of certain criteria in terms of offerings or in terms of what the customer industry is and so on, and then or what their size is for that matter or which geography they are located in, and then create those backlogs that okay, for the next 2 mailing campaigns, let's work on this list. This is our prioritized list for the next mailing campaign, which is to run in the next 2 weeks. So backlog is one way of working on your sales process. Another way is we experimented with this a few weeks back, is using the Jira tool to assign tasks and to monitor tasks. And we found that it wasn't working because for us it wasn't working. We were more comfortable assigning tasks on the basis of each person's individual roles, and the roles were more linked to the markets and the territories they were handling. So adopting a common Jira board became a bit cumbersome. So what we did was we broken that up. We don't use a Jira board anymore. We use our own to-do lists, which are embedded into our Google calendars. But what we did was we started a weekly process of reviewing together what we were doing. So each one of us is working in a different market, in a different geography, or in a different vertical, but we are reviewing together what are the key accounts we are going after, what are the key actions we are doing. In some cases, those actions revolving around marketing or revolving around collateral or presentations, some of those actions become common. Some of those actions are unique to each individual. But this is a team discussion which happens without any reporting element into it. It's an element of catching up, reminding each other that, hey, you were chasing that customer, what happened over there, did you miss out something? And it is not a reporting because you're doing it within peers. So I think that works very well for us. So what we are doing over here is we have adopted the essence of Agile, we have adopted the spirit or the culture of Agile without necessarily adopting a particular Agile tool as it is. And I think that's what's important. You have to adopt the culture. Once you've adopted the culture, you will find a tool or you'll be able to use a modified version of a tool for yourself and make it work for yourself.
All right. Okay, so one more thing, and I would just like to remind all our listeners that we are right now heading towards the close of our session. So if you have any more questions, now would be the time to type them in. So moving forward, Rajat, one more thing that we have here is that in Agile, you have, like in your session, you focus a lot on flexibility in terms of like flexibility in anything that you do, in being able to react to the situation as it is happening. So would you categorize Agile as something purely reactionary, or should there be an element of planning as well?
Hello? Yeah.
Hi, Rajat, please go on.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question. There's a very thin divided line being working in an unplanned manner, in a reactionary manner, as opposed to being able to plan and build that plan in a flexible way, or keep tweaking the plan in a flexible way. I think that's a very good question. What we've seen is over the last few months, last year or so, when we've been taking our offerings to the market, we've been seeing situations where the way we define and position our offering is not necessarily what the market might be looking for. So we've kind of tried to tweak our offerings or be able to flex our offering in a way. For example, offering a Scrum team on a continuous development mode works for a lot of customers but doesn't work for a lot of other customers whose requirements keep fluctuating. So we created an offering called what we call a continuous development model, which is typically half a Scrum team, which is dedicated to a customer. So basically one sprint cycle in a month, and that one sprint cycle is also spread across the whole month in terms of the team working only at 50% capacity in a week or in a day. And the rest of the time, the team is possibly parallelly aligned to another customer as well. So it may be that 4 hours in a day it is working on a project, one customer's project, and in the remaining 4 hours of the day it's working on another customer's project. And whatever combinations may be possible out of that. So what we were doing over here is really flexing our offering to be able to take it to different customers with different needs. Now, when it comes to responding in a, when you say responding in a unplanned manner or just reacting in a reactionary manner, yes, we've experienced that as well. We've experienced situations where we started off with a plan, with a marketing plan or with a sales plan, and we find that often we are drowned into tasks. So it takes away, we make a weekly plan or a bi-weekly plan, and we find that by the middle of the week we are drowned into tasks. So that is when we found that yes, we were becoming reactionary at particular stages, and that is when we decided to adopt this what I call this practice of weekly discussions within ourselves, which allows us to keep a focus on what we see as our priority areas. So for example, when we talk of our prospective lists of customers or our sales prospects, we don't just follow the normal sales funnel categorization. We categorize we created one more categorization for ourselves, which is called named accounts, which is accounts which remain there irrespective of whether there are live opportunities that we are chasing currently or not. So for example, I'm chasing, let's say I'm chasing the Tata Group. The Tata Group is in news these days, so let's talk about the Tata Group. So if I've decided that Tata Group is a customer I would like to acquire, I don't have any leads with Tata Group right now. I probably don't even know anyone in Tata Group except Mr. Ratan Tata. But I've called it a named account because I know I would like to do business with the Tata Group. I may have 5 other prospects with whom I'm chasing deals at different stages. But every week I remind myself, what have I done about Tata Group? Have I reached the next person after Mr. Ratan Tata? Do I know who the CIO of Tata Group is? How am I going to reach him? What am I going to reach him with? So this is a parallel process which continues in addition to all the tasks and the intermediate things which keep coming my way, where I might be becoming completely just responsive and not working in a planned way. So this is how I distinguish, this is how I demarcate what are my core areas which I need to be working on in a planned way, and what are the new things which keep coming on my way which I have to keep responding to. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Rajat, that makes things a bit more clearer. So I think we have one last question here, more of a piece of information, more like. So there's something called the modern agile, which is kind of based on the core principles of make people awesome, make safety a prerequisite, experiment and learn rapidly, and deliver value continuously. So if should we call this a modern agile in a sense, or is the present agile what you talked about also about these very same values?
I think the values you mentioned some of the terms you used while describing modern agile are more or less similar to the ideas that I tried to cover in my presentation. When you say, improve or deliver improved value, I think that's what you said, continuously. So delivering improved value continuously is nothing but talking more in terms of being able to see what the customer expectations are, being able to absorb them, learn, change how you're working internally, be flexible enough to go back with a better offering, more suitable offering to that customer. So yes, I think we are talking more or less the same ideas. I must confess I'm not fully familiar with the entire concept of modern agile, so there could be more to it, which probably might be different or might be more than what I have talked about. So that's entirely possible. But the things you mentioned are definitely sound similar to what I was trying to cover.
All right. Thank you, Rajat. And with that, it looks like we've come to the end of all the questions that we've had, and also an end to our session for today. And I would like to thank you, Rajat, for such a great session, and all our listeners for sticking around with us for so long and being so engaged with the session. So, and with that, I would like to bid adieu to our listeners for today. And I would just like to inform that our next webinar is going to be on mobile testing with Appium, and we sure hope to see you there. And that was all for today. And once again, thank you, Rajat, and thank you all our listeners.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nilanjana, for running this through and making this run smoothly. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today, sitting through this presentation, and for your questions. They were valuable to me as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Signing out for tonight. Bye.